This is the kind of place where secrets go to stay buried, where 20 men who've spent their lives on the wrong side of the law gather every Tuesday, confident that what happens inside these walls dies inside these walls. They've been meeting here for 15 years, and for 7 months, they've been wrong, but they don't know that yet, because the person who's about to change everything isn't even supposed to be paying attention. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories where innocence unravels power, consider subscribing. More truths ahead. What none of these hardened men realize is that a 9-year-old girl in the corner has been staring at the ceiling for the last 30 minutes, and she's about to ask a question that will destroy everything they've built. The camera pushes through the heavy wooden door of the Iron Hollow Clubhouse, and the first thing that hits you is the smell. Motor oil and leather, cigar smoke, and decades of unspoken rules baked into the walls. Golden hour light bleeds through dirty windows, cutting thick beams through the haze. This is the kind of sanctuary that doesn't announce itself. No sign out front, no address on any map. Just a converted warehouse on the edge of nowhere, where men who've lived hard lives come to feel safe. 20 men occupy the space this Tuesday evening in late September, not young hotheads trying to prove something. These are veterans of the road, men in their 40s and 50s with graying beards and faded tattoos that tell stories they don't repeat out loud. The kind of quiet confidence that comes from surviving things most people only see in movies. They're playing cards at mismatched tables, drinking from sweating bottles, talking in low rumbles about carburetors and old runs and nothing that matters too much. At the head table sits Callaway Vance. Everyone calls him Reaper. He's the club president, mid-50s, with sparse words and a presence that fills the room without effort. He doesn't raise his voice because he's never had to. Next to him is Deacon Ryle, the vice president, early 40s, sharp eyes that miss nothing, the kind of man who notices when someone's breathing changes. Around the room are the others. Flint with his scarred knuckles, Bram who did 8 years in Leavenworth and came out quieter, Lowell who can strip an engine blindfolded, Hackett whose reputation precedes him in 3 states. These are lifers, men whose faces have been the same for 15 years of Tuesday nights. In the back corner, almost invisible against a stack of old crates and motorcycle parts, sits a small figure that doesn't belong to this world. Poet Ryle is 9 years old. She's wearing jeans with grass stains on the knees and a faded purple shirt 2 sizes too big. Her dark hair is pulled into a ponytail that's come half undone. She sits cross-legged on a folding chair with a coloring book open in her lap, a blue crayon moving in slow, deliberate strokes across the page. Her mother named her Poet because she was born silent, didn't cry, didn't scream, just looked around with wide eyes like she was taking notes. She still does that. Watches more than she speaks, notices things other people walk right past. She's here because her mother Sloan had a double shift at the diner and nobody else to call. Deacon didn't say no when his sister asked. He never does when it comes to family. Poet's been here a dozen times before. The men know her face, but they don't see her. Not really. She's wallpaper, background. A kid who learned early how to stay quiet in loud rooms. She's been coloring the same sky for 30 minutes now. Blue crayon moving back and forth, filling in the space above a cartoon house. But she's not really focused on the page. Her eyes keep drifting upward, to the ceiling, to the corner where the wooden beam meets the brick wall, where shadows pool thick and most people's eyes skip right over because there's nothing interesting there, just darkness and dust and the architecture of an old building. Except Poet sees something. The clubhouse has always been their church. That's what Reaper calls it. The one place where the outside world doesn't reach. No cameras, no wires, no snitches. That's the rule that's been carved into the foundation of this place for 15 years. These men have built their lives around the belief that what happens inside these walls stays inside these walls. They've swept for bugs. They've checked for tails. They've been careful in ways that would make paranoid people look careless. The Leonard Sky Nerd playing from the old speakers in the corner is loud enough that conversation requires leaning in. Flint is telling a story about a bike he saw in Kansas City. Bram is shuffling cards with practiced hands. Lowell is arguing about carburetor settings with Hackett, in the kind of low-key debate that could go on for hours. Everything is comfortable, routine, safe. Poets. Crayon stops moving. She tilts her head, squinting at that shadowed corner where the ceiling beam meets brick. Her small face scrunches in concentration, Then she looks down at her coloring book, then back up at the ceiling, comparing something, checking. The music swells into a guitar solo. Someone laughs at something Flint said. The cards hit the table with soft slaps. Normal sounds in a normal Tuesday that's been repeating itself for years. Poet's voice comes out quiet, almost swallowed by the noise. Uncle Deacon? Deacon is studying his cards, 3 of a kind showing. He doesn't look up right away. Yeah, Poet? Why is there a light up there? The question floats into the room like smoke. At first, nobody really hears it, or if they do, it doesn't register as important. Just a kid asking about kid things. But Deacon's eyes flick toward her. He knows his niece. Knows she doesn't ask questions unless she's already thought about the answer and come up short. What light, kid? Flint asks, not unkindly. He's still smiling from his story, beer halfway to his lips. Poet points. Small finger extended toward that corner junction 20 feet away. The red one. It blinks. The room doesn't explode. It doesn't shatter. The change is subtler than that. More like the air pressure dropping before a storm. Conversations don't trail off. They get cut. Cards pause mid-shuffle. Bottles lower, slowly back to tables. The quality of sound shifts from comfortable noise to something thinner, more fragile. 20 pairs of eyes, hardened by years on the road and behind bars, start to track upward. Following the trajectory of a 9-year-old's finger into a corner, they've walked under 1,000 times without a second thought. Deacon stands. The movement is controlled, careful, but there's something in the set of his shoulders that makes the room go quieter. He walks to the back wall, his boots heavy on the concrete floor. Nobody speaks. The guitar solo on the speakers feels suddenly too loud, like it's mocking the tension building in the space. He drags over a folding chair. The metal legs scrape against concrete. The sound makes Bram wince. Deacon steps up onto the chair, bringing himself closer to that shadowed junction. Close enough to see detail, close enough to understand. His face changes. It's not a dramatic shift, not a gasp or a curse, just a tightening around his eyes, a stillness that spreads through his body like ice forming on a lake. He stares at that corner for 5 seconds that feel like 5 minutes. Then he looks down at Poet, sitting there with her coloring book and her blue crayon, completely unaware that she's just dropped a grenade into the center of their lives. How long you been looking at that, sweetheart? His voice is carefully controlled, the kind of control that takes effort. Poet shrugs, a small movement of narrow shoulders. Since we got here, I guess. It blinks sometimes, like every few seconds. Every few seconds, that means power. That means active. That means someone, somewhere, is either watching this room right now or has been recording for who knows how long. Deacon climbs down from the chair. His hands are steady, but his jaw is tight enough to crack teeth. He doesn't say anything at first, just looks at Reaper. The 2 men have known each other for 20 years. They can communicate in glances. And the glance Deacon gives his president right now says everything without saying anything. Reaper stands. The movement is slow, deliberate. The way a predator stands when it realizes it might be prey. He walks to the front door of the clubhouse, checks the parking lot through the narrow window, sees nothing unusual. Then he closes the door, locks it from the inside with the heavy deadbolt that's supposed to keep the world out. When he turns back to face the room, his voice is quiet, lethal in its calm. Phones, table, now. One by one, 20 men pull devices from their pockets and set them on the nearest surface. The sound of plastic and metal hitting wood echoes in the silence. Nobody argues, nobody asks why. These men have survived because they know when to follow orders without question. 20 phones in a pile. 20 potential tracking devices or recording tools suddenly suspect. Deacon still hasn't spoken. He's staring at that corner like if he looks hard enough, he can make it not be true. What is it? Lowell asks. His voice is rough, uncertain. He doesn't like uncertainty. Deacon takes a breath. It's a camera. The 2 words land in the room like a body hitting pavement. Nobody moves, nobody breathes. The implications are too vast to process all at once. This isn't just any room. This is where they've planned everything for 15 years. Every run, every deal, every decision that skirted or crossed the line. Conversations about things that could put them away for decades. Confessions that were supposed to die in this space. Arguments that got heated, plans that got specific, all of it potentially recorded. Bram is the first to break the silence. How long's it been there? The question comes out strangled. Nobody answers because nobody knows. That's what makes it worse than any answer could be. It could have been installed last week, last month, last year. The uncertainty is a knife that keeps twisting. Could be recent, Hackett offers, but his voice lacks conviction. Could be years, Flint counters, and the word years hangs in the air like a noose. Lowell stands up fast enough that his chair scrapes backward. We need to sweep the whole place, now, find out if there are more. And if there are? Bram asks. What then? Reaper raises a hand, not high, not dramatic, just enough to cut through the rising panic. We don't touch it, not yet. Why the hell not? Flint's voice is rising, anger covering fear the way it always does. Because if we react, whoever's watching knows we found it. Right now, if they're monitoring, they just saw a normal. Tuesday, cards and beer and nothing that matters. We start ripping things apart. We confirm we're onto them. The logic is sound, but it tastes like poison. Deacon can see it in the faces around the room. These men built their lives on the idea that this space was sacred, untouchable. And now they're being told to pretend everything is fine, while a lens watches their every move. So what do we do? Lowell asks, and there's a desperation in the question that makes him sound younger than his 46 years. Reaper walks back to the head table, sits down like the conversation is over. We finish the night. Act normal. Tomorrow, Lowell, you bring that guy from Tulsa, the one who sweeps for surveillance. We find out how deep this goes, but tonight, we give them nothing. The men look at each other. Suspicion is already starting to creep in like smoke under a door. Because if there's a camera, someone had to install it. Someone had access to this clubhouse. Someone had time alone in here to do the work. Deacon remembers something. His voice cuts through the thick silence. 3 months ago, we had an electrician come in, contract worker, fix that wiring issue near the back. Eyes turn toward him. You remember his name? Reaper asks. Deacon shakes his head. Quiet guy, kept to himself, did the work and left. Anyone check his credentials? Bram asks, but he already knows the answer. They didn't because they never thought they needed to. The electrician came recommended by someone who came recommended by someone else. The kind of referral chain that felt safe until it didn't. What about the state inspection? Hackett adds. Last spring, building codes. 2 guys spent over an hour in here checking outlets and load capacity. The paranoia is spreading now. Every stranger who's been in this space over the last year suddenly feels like a potential threat. Every maintenance call, every delivery, every moment when the clubhouse wasn't full of watchful eyes. Flint's voice drops low. Dangerous. Or it's one of us. The accusation hangs there, ugly and impossible to take back. 20 men who've called each other brothers for years, suddenly seeing shadows where there used to be trust. Because if the camera's been there for months or years, and nobody outside the club had that kind of sustained access, then the math starts pointing inward. Reaper's voice cracks like a whip. We don't do this, we don't turn on each other, not until we know what we're dealing with. But the seed is planted. Deacon can see it in how men are sitting now, slightly apart, slightly guarded, hands visible on tables instead of relaxed in laps. The body language of people who just realize they might be surrounded by threats instead of allies. Through all of this, Poet has been watching. She doesn't understand what's happening, not really, but she knows it's bad. She knows because of how Uncle Deacon's voice sounds, because of how all these big men who usually laugh and joke are now, sitting like statues. She looks down at her coloring book, at the blue sky she's been working on, and something about it feels wrong now, incomplete, like she started something she doesn't know how to finish. The men force themselves back into motion. It's painful to watch. Cards get picked up with hands that shake slightly. Beers get sipped by men who aren't tasting them. Conversations restart, but they're hollow, performative. Everyone's aware of the lens in the corner now. Everyone's editing their words, policing their expressions, performing normalcy for an audience they can't see but know is there. Deacon walks over to Poet, crouches down beside her chair so they're eye level. He forces a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. You doing okay, sweetheart? She nods, but her voice is small. Did I do something wrong? The question breaks something in Deacon's chest. No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong. You did exactly right. You saw something, and you told me. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. Is everyone mad? Nobody's mad at you, poet, I promise. But she can feel it. The way the room has changed, the way these men who used to barely notice her are now hyper-aware of her presence. This small witness to their unraveling. This child who saw what 20 hardened criminals missed. The night drags on, minutes feel like hours. Every laugh sounds forced, every gesture feels calculated. The camera watches, patient and silent, a tiny red light blinking in steady rhythm like a heartbeat. Or a countdown. Around 10:30, men start making excuses to leave. Early mornings, long rides, things that need handling. The clubhouse empties faster than it ever has on a Tuesday. Usually they'd stay until midnight, until the stories ran out and the beer ran low. But tonight nobody wants to be here. Nobody wants to perform safety when they feel exposed. Deacon is one of the last to go. He helps Poet pack up her coloring book and crayons. She's quiet more, withdrawn than usual. He knows she's processing, trying to understand the tension she triggered without meaning to. As they walk to his truck in the gravel parking lot, Poet looks back at the clubhouse. The building looks the same as it always has. Weathered wood and brick. No windows on the main floor. A single light over the door. It looks like a place where secrets could stay buried forever. But now, they both know better. Deacon straps Poet into the passenger seat. Starts the engine. The radio comes on automatically, some country station playing low. They drive in silence for 5 minutes before Poet speaks. Uncle Deacon, are we always being watched? He doesn't know how to answer that. A month ago, he would have said no. Would have told her that privacy still exists, that some spaces are still safe. But now, driving through the dark with his niece beside him, and the weight of that camera's implications pressing down on his chest, he doesn't know what's true anymore. Sometimes, he says finally, sometimes people watch when they shouldn't. Poet nods slowly, processing. Then she goes back to looking out the window at the passing darkness. Deacon's phone buzzes in the cup holder, a text from Reaper, 3 words. Meeting, 6 a.m. That's 12 hours from now. 12 hours to think about what that camera saw. 12 hours to wonder who installed it and why. 12 hours to feel the walls closing in. He drops Poet off at his sister's apartment. Sloane is exhausted from her double shift, but she gives Deacon a hug, asks if everything's okay. He says yes because what else can he say? He watches them go inside, watches the door close, and for a moment he envies his sister's world. A world where the biggest worry is making rent and keeping food on the table. Simple problems with simple solutions. He drives home, parks in his driveway, sits in the truck with the engine off, staring at his house, wondering if there are cameras there too, wondering if any space is safe, wondering how long they've been living in an illusion of control. Inside, he doesn't turn on lights, just sits in the dark living room, staring at the ceiling, looking for blinking red lights, finding none but not feeling relieved. Because absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. That's what they teach you in prison. What you don't see can hurt you just as much as what you do. His phone buzzes again. Another text. This one from Bram. Can't sleep. You? Deacon doesn't respond. Because what would he say? That a 9-year-old girl with a crayon just unraveled 15 years of careful operation. That everything they built is compromised. That tomorrow they'll find out just how bad it really is. He thinks about Poet, about her innocence, about how she saw the camera not because she was looking for it, but because she had nothing else to do but look. No agenda, no fear, no reason to ignore what was right there in plain sight. That's the thing about power. It makes you blind. Blind to threats because you've convinced yourself you've eliminated them all. Blind to surveillance because you've swept for it before and found nothing. Blind to the small details because you're too busy managing the big picture. And sometimes it takes the most innocent person in the room to see what everyone else missed. Deacon finally goes to bed around 3 a.m, doesn't sleep, just lies there staring at his own ceiling, waiting for dawn, waiting for the meeting, waiting to find out if the camera was alone or if it had friends, waiting to learn how much of their lives has been recorded and cataloged and prepared for presentation in a federal courtroom. At 5:45, his phone rings. Not a text this time, a call from Lowell. Deacon answers. Yeah? Lowell's voice is tight, scared. Turn on the news. What channel? Any of them. Deacon grabs the remote, flips on the television. The morning news is just starting. Local station. The anchor's face is serious as she reads from the teleprompter, and then Deacon sees it, the headline scrolling across the bottom of the screen. His blood turns to ice water. Federal raid underway at local motorcycle clubhouse. Multiple arrests expected. ATF and FBI joint operation. The camera cuts to live footage. 3 black SUVs rolling down a gravel road that Deacon knows by heart. The same road he drove last night. The same road that leads to the Iron Hollow clubhouse. They're not waiting for tomorrow. They're not waiting for the sweep team from Tulsa. They're moving now, this morning, before the club can react, before they can destroy evidence or run or coordinate their stories. Deacon watches federal agents pour out of the vehicles, tactical vests, weapons drawn, warrants in hand. They don't knock, they don't announce. They just breach the door like they've done it 1,000 times before. His phone explodes with calls, texts flooding in, Bram, Flint, Hackett. Everyone's seeing the same thing. Everyone. Realizing at the same moment that the 7 months of surveillance they feared might have been 7 months of building an airtight case. Deacon's hands are shaking as he gets dressed. He doesn't know if he should go to the clubhouse or run. Doesn't know if his name is on the warrants or if he has a few hours of freedom left. Doesn't know anything except that a 9-year-old girl pointed at a ceiling last night and everything that came after was inevitable. He thinks about calling his sister, warning her, but warning her about what? That her brother might be going away for a very long time. That Poet's innocent observation triggered a cascade that nobody could stop. The news anchor is still talking, more details emerging. RICO charges, conspiracy, racketeering. A 7-month investigation culminating in this morning's coordinated raid. 17 arrest warrants issued, more expected. 17. Deacon counts in his head. Counts the men who were there last night. Counts himself. Counts Reaper and Bram and all the others. The number matches. Have you ever seen something everyone else missed? Something so small it seemed meaningless until it changed everything. If moments like this make you think differently about the world, about what we notice and what we ignore, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. There are more stories ahead, where the smallest observation carries the heaviest weight. The kind of stories that remind us to pay attention, because sometimes the truth is hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone innocent enough to simply point and ask why. The federal agents move with the kind of precision that comes from months of planning. No wasted motion, no hesitation. The lead agent is a woman in her mid-40s named Cassidy Brennan, and she's been building RICO cases for the Justice Department for 16 years. She knows exactly what she's looking for, and exactly where to find it, because she's watched these men for 7 months through 12 different camera angles positioned throughout the clubhouse. The door comes down with a single hit from the battering ram. Splinters scatter across the concrete floor. Agents flood through the opening, weapons drawn, voices overlapping in practiced commands. The clubhouse is empty at 6:17 in the morning. Nobody here yet for the emergency meeting Reaper called. Nobody here to resist or run or make this complicated. Brennan walks in last, unhurried. She's seen this room from every angle through monitors in a surveillance van parked 3 miles away. But being here in person is different. The smell of old leather and motor oil, the weight of history in the walls, the sense that this space has absorbed decades of secrets and held them close. She walks to the back corner, looks up at the camera that Poet spotted, the lens that started all of this, unraveling 12 hours ahead of schedule. Brennan had planned to wait another week. Let the club relax after finding the device. Let them think they'd swept the place clean and found nothing else. Then move in when their guard dropped. But the girl changed that calculus. The moment Poet pointed at the ceiling, Brennan knew they had to accelerate. Because once you know you're being watched, behavior changes. Evidence gets destroyed. Stories get coordinated. People run. So here they are. Dawn raid. 17 warrants. 4 agents positioning themselves at known addresses across the county. The net is already closing. Brennan's phone rings. She answers without looking. "Talk to me." "We've got Vance. Picked him up at his house. He was awake. Didn't resist." The voice belongs to Agent Torres, her second in command. "Ryle? In transit. Grabbed him getting into his truck. Had a go bag in the passenger seat." So Deacon was running, or thinking about it. Smart man making a smart decision 12 hours too late. The others? Sweeping now, we should have everyone in custody within the hour. Brennan ends the call, looks around the clubhouse one more time. Her team is already cataloging everything. Photographs, measurements, evidence tags on anything that might matter in court. The cameras are being carefully extracted, preserved as exhibits. 7 months of footage already digitized and backed up in 3 separate secure locations. 847 hours of recordings. Every meeting, every conversation, every moment these men thought they were safe. The irony is not lost on Brennan. They swept this place 4 times in the last 2 years, brought in professionals, checked for bugs and cameras and tracking devices, found nothing because the cameras were that good. Military grade, installed by a contractor who used to work NSA surveillance before he went private and started taking government contracts for sensitive operations. And a 9-year-old girl with a coloring book spotted 1 in 30 minutes. Brennan makes a note to include that detail in her report, not because it's legally relevant, but because it says something about assumptions, about how the most careful people can miss what's right in front of them when they're too busy looking for complex threats. 20 miles away, Deacon sits in the back of an unmarked SUV with his hands cuffed in front of him. Agent Torres is driving. Another agent named Parks rides shotgun. Nobody's talking. The silence is heavy, expectant, like the moment before a storm breaks. Deacon stares out the window at the sunrise painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He thinks about Poet, about how she's probably still asleep right now, curled up in her bed at her mother's apartment, unaware that the question she asked last night just collapsed an entire organization. "She did us a favor, you know," Torres says, glancing in the rearview mirror. "Your niece." Deacon doesn't respond, doesn't give them anything. If she hadn't spotted that camera, you'd have kept going, kept digging yourselves deeper. This way, maybe some of you get a chance to make better choices. The words sound reasonable, but Deacon knows interrogation techniques when he hears them. Build rapport, suggest cooperation. Make it sound like talking is the smart play. He's been through this before. Different agents, different charges, same game. "I want a lawyer," he says quietly. Torres nods. "Expected that." "You'll get one. Just thought you should know that 14 of your brothers are already in custody. 3 more getting picked up as we speak. That means 17 people all making decisions about how to handle this. Some of them are going to talk. That's just statistics. Question is whether you want to be first or last to the table." Deacon goes back to watching the sunrise, says nothing, but his mind is racing. 17 arrests means they got everyone who was at the clubhouse last night. Everyone who heard Poet's question and watched the room change. That's the whole leadership structure, the enforcers, the decision makers. The club is finished. At the federal building downtown, they process Deacon through intake. Fingerprints, photographs, property inventory. The same ritual he went through when he was 23 and stupid enough to think he was untouchable. He's 41 now, old enough to know better, not wise enough to have chosen differently. They put him in an interview room. Standard setup, table, 3 chairs, camera in the corner. He looks at that camera and thinks about the ones in the clubhouse, about how many hours of his life have been recorded without his knowledge, how many conversations, how many moments he thought were private. The door opens. Brennan walks in with a thick folder and a laptop. She sits across from him, studies his face for a moment before speaking. Deacon Ryle, 2 priors. Assault with a deadly weapon, pled down to simple assault. Possession with intent, served 18 months. Clean for the last 6 years, at least on paper. Deacon says nothing. "Your niece seems like a sweet kid, smart, observant." That gets a reaction, subtle but there, jaw tightening, eyes hardening. Brennan raises a hand. "Relax, this isn't about her. She's 9. She pointed at a ceiling. That's not a crime. But you should know that her observation accelerated our timeline. We were planning to move next week, give you time to find the camera, sweep for others, think you were safe, then come in when you weren't expecting it." She opens the laptop, turns it so Deacon can see the screen. It shows the clubhouse from an elevated angle, timestamp from 3 months ago. Deacon recognizes the scene, a meeting where they discussed a run to Colorado, details about timing and routes and what they were moving. "We have 7 months of this," Brennan says. "Every meeting, every deal, Every conversation where you thought you were untouchable because you were inside your sanctuary. She closes the laptop, leans back. RICO charges carry 20 years mandatory minimum. We have 17 of you on conspiracy. Racketeering, interstate transportation of stolen goods. 3 of you are looking at weapons enhancements. This isn't a maybe case, Deacon. This is math. Deacon knows she's right, knows that if they have even half of what she's claiming, the evidence is overwhelming. But he also knows that cases fall apart, witnesses recant, technicalities emerge, and most importantly, talking never helps. Every word you give them is a tool they use against you. Lawyer, he says again. Brennan nods, gathers her materials, stands. You'll have one within the hour. Think about what I said, about being first versus last to the table. She leaves. The door locks behind her. Deacon is alone with the camera in the corner, being watched again, always watched, and he wonders if there's anywhere left in the world where people can still have privacy. Across town, Sloan Ryle is getting ready for another double shift when she sees the news. Local station, breaking story, federal raid, motorcycle club, multiple arrests, and then they show his picture, her brother's face. Deacon's booking photo from his first arrest 20 years ago, because that's what they always use. Make everyone look guilty before trial even starts. She calls his phone, goes straight to voicemail, tries again, same result. Her hands are shaking as she searches online for more details, finds mentions of RICO charges, conspiracy, words that mean serious time, words that mean her brother might not be coming home for a very long time. Poet walks into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She's wearing pajamas with cartoon stars on them, hair messy from sleep. She looks so young in the morning light, so innocent. Is Uncle Deacon okay? She asks. Sloan doesn't know how to answer, doesn't know how much to say. Poet is 9, but she's perceptive. She'll know if her mother lies. He's in some trouble, baby, but he's going to be okay. Because of the camera? The question hits Sloan like cold water. What camera? Poet climbs onto a kitchen chair. The one at the clubhouse. I saw it. Asked Uncle Deacon about it. All the men got really quiet. Sloan feels her stomach drop. When was this? Last night, there was a red light. It was blinking. And just like that, Sloan understands. Her daughter saw something, said something. And now her brother is in federal custody because a 9-year-old girl has better observational skills than 20 career criminals. She pulls Poet into a hug, holds her tight. You didn't do anything wrong. You understand me. You saw something and you asked a question. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. But even as she says it, Sloan knows the truth is more complicated. Poet's innocence just destroyed her uncle's life. Her observation just dismantled an organization. She did the right thing by accident, and the consequences are going to echo for years. At the federal courthouse, Magistrate Judge Elizabeth Chen is reviewing arrest warrants and evidence summaries. She's seen a lot of cases in her 22 years on the bench, but the scope of this one is unusual. 17 simultaneous arrests, 7 months of surveillance, video evidence from 12 hidden cameras. The investigation was meticulous, the evidence overwhelming. She approves detention without bail for all 17 defendants. Flight risk and danger to the community. Standard language, but accurate. These are men who've spent their lives learning how to disappear. Men with connections across state lines. Men who know how to hurt people who threaten them. By noon, all 17 are in federal custody. No bail, no release. Awaiting arraignment hearings that will come in waves over the next 72 hours. In the detention center, Deacon sits in a holding cell with Bram and Hackett. Nobody's talking. What is there to say? They all know the score. They all watched enough police procedurals to understand how this works. The first person to cooperate gets the best deal. After that, the deals get progressively worse until you're the last one holding out with nothing to trade. They got everything, Bram says finally. His voice is flat, defeated. 7 months. That's what the agent told me. 7 months of recordings. Hackett is staring at the wall. How did we miss it? We swept that place 4 times. Because we were looking for cheap bugs, Deacon says. Dollar store equipment. This was military grade, professional installation. We never had a chance. The girl saw it in 30 minutes, Bram says, and there's something like wonder in his voice. A 9-year-old kid with a coloring book. The 3 men sit with that reality, how their carefully constructed security was an illusion. How all their precautions meant nothing. How innocence and boredom accomplished what federal agents couldn't. "What are you going to do?" Hackett asks Deacon. "Nothing. Keep my mouth shut. Wait for trial." That could be 2 years from now. You willing to sit in here for 2 years before they even start? Deacon doesn't answer because he doesn't have a good answer. 2 years of pretrial detention, then a trial that could last months, then a sentence that could be decades. The math is brutal no matter how you calculate it. Bram leans forward, lowers his voice even though they're alone. Torres said 14 people were talking about cooperation. That means 3 of us are holding out. You, me, Hackett, maybe a couple others. "You thinking about flipping?" Deacon asks. "I'm thinking about not dying in prison. I'm 48 years old. 20-year minimum means I'm 68 when I get out, if I live that long." Hackett shakes his head. "You talk, you're a dead man. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but someone will get to you. That's the rule." "What club?" Bram asks. "What rule? It's over. The club is done. 17 of us in custody. Clubhouse seized. Assets frozen. There is no organization anymore. Just a bunch of individuals making individual choices about how much time they want to serve. The words hang in the cell like poison gas. Because Bram is right. The Brotherhood survived a lot over 15 years. Raids, arrests, internal disputes. But it never faced complete destruction. Never had every leader locked up simultaneously. Never lost its sanctuary and its security in the same moment. This is extinction, not evolution. At Poet School, she sits in her 3rd grade classroom, trying to focus on math worksheets. But her mind keeps drifting. She thinks about Uncle Deacon, about how his face looked last night when she pointed at the camera, about how all those big men went quiet in a way that made her stomach hurt. Her teacher, Mrs. Holbrook, notices she's distracted. "Poet, you okay?" She nods. But she's not. She feels like she broke something important and doesn't know how to fix it. At recess, she sits alone on the swings. Not swinging, just sitting, watching other kids play. Usually she likes recess, likes the noise and movement. But today everything feels too loud, too bright, like the world is slightly wrong in ways she can't explain. A girl from her class, Maya, comes over, sits on the swing next to her. "You seem sad." "I'm okay," Poet says. "My mom says your uncle got arrested, that he was in a gang." Poet looks at Maya. "He's not in a gang. He's in a club. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" Poet doesn't actually know. She just knows that Uncle Deacon is a good person who gives her piggyback rides and lets her color while adults talk. He's not scary. He's not mean. He's just Uncle Deacon. "I don't know," she admits. Maya swings slowly. "My mom says you helped the police, that you saw something. I just saw a light. I asked a question. That was brave." But Poet doesn't feel brave. She feels like she said something true, and the truth hurt people she loves. That doesn't feel brave. It feels confusing. The swing creaks as she pushes off gently, back and forth. A rhythm that's soothing even when nothing else is. Back at the federal building, Brennan is in a conference room with the rest of her team. They're reviewing the arrests, cataloging evidence, planning the prosecution strategy that will unfold over the next year. Torres brings in coffee, sets a cup in front of Brennan. 14 of them have requested attorneys and started cooperation discussions. Reaper, Ryle, and Flint are holding out. That's what I expected. The leadership always holds out longest. They have the most to lose and the least to gain from cooperation. What about the others? We'll see what they have to offer. Some of them probably don't know much beyond their own roles, but a few might have information about interstate operations, distribution networks. That's what we really want. Torres sits down. The girl is going to be mentioned in reports. Newspapers will probably pick it up. 9-year-old spots federal surveillance equipment. That's a human interest angle they'll love. Brennan nods. "I've already notified victim services. They'll check in with the family. Make sure the girl understands she's not in trouble. Make sure the mother knows we're not treating the child as a witness or participant. Think the family will need protection from what's left of the club? Doubtful. They're fractured, leaderless, facing decades in prison. Revenge isn't practical when you're fighting for your survival." But Torres looks unconvinced. Criminals aren't always practical. Brennan knows he's right. makes a note to have a patrol unit swing by Sloane's apartment a few times over the next week. Just in case. Just to be safe. Evening comes, Deacon is moved to a more permanent cell. Single occupancy, 6 by 9 feet, concrete and steel, a window so narrow you can barely see the sky. He lies on the bunk, stares at the ceiling, thinks about how many ceilings he's stared at in his life. Prison cells, motel rooms, the clubhouse, his childhood bedroom. All different, but somehow the same, flat surfaces that hold no answers. He thinks about Poet, about whether she understands what happened, about whether Sloane is angry at him for bringing her daughter into that world, even peripherally, about whether a 9-year-old will carry guilt for something she couldn't have prevented or understood. The cell door has a small window. Through it, Deacon can see a guard station, a clock on the wall. It's 8:37. 26 hours ago, he was sitting in the clubhouse playing cards, comfortable, safe, convinced that his world was secure. 26 hours ago, he had freedom. Now, he has a lawyer he hasn't met yet. Charges he hasn't been formally arraigned on. A trial that's years away. And a piece of information sitting in his head that the prosecution would very much like to have. He knows things about operations in other states, about people the feds haven't identified, about money that's hidden where they haven't looked. That information is worth something. Worth years off a sentence. Worth the difference between dying in prison and maybe seeing sunlight again before he's old. All he has to do is talk. All he has to do is betray men who called him brother for 15 years. All he has to do is become exactly what they always said they'd never be. The choice should be obvious. Self-preservation, survival. Any rational person would take the deal. But Deacon keeps thinking about Poet, about her innocence, about how she saw a light and asked a question and told the truth without calculation or agenda. If a 9-year-old can be that honest, what does it say about him if he's not? At 9:15, a guard comes to his cell. "You have a visitor." Deacon sits up. "My lawyer? Your sister." They lead him to a visitation room, glass partition, phones on either side, maximum security protocol, even though he hasn't been convicted of anything yet. Sloane sits on the other side of the glass. Her eyes are red. She looks exhausted. They pick up the phones simultaneously. "I'm sorry," Deacon says. "For what?" "For bringing Poet into that. For putting her in a position where she saw something she shouldn't have seen." Sloane shakes her head. She doesn't understand what happened. Just knows you're in trouble. Keeps asking if it's her fault. The words cut deeper than any sentence could. Tell her no. Tell her she did nothing wrong. Tell her I love her. "I will. But Deacon, you need to know something. The news is calling her a hero, saying she helped expose criminal activity. They're turning her into a story." Deacon feels ice in his veins. "She's 9. I know. I'm trying to keep her away from reporters, but our address is public record. It's only a matter of time before someone shows up. Can you move? Stay with someone else? With what money? I'm living paycheck to paycheck as it is." Deacon wants to help, wants to solve this, but he's sitting in a cell with no resources and no prospects. He's useless. "The agent who arrested me," he says. "Brennan, she seems reasonable. Maybe she can help. Keep the press away from Poet." "You think she'd do that?" "I think she's a professional. I think she understands that dragging a 9-year-old through the media circus isn't good for anyone." Sloane nods slowly, wipes her eyes. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. My lawyer is supposed to come tomorrow. We'll talk about options. They're offering deals. I saw it on the news. Cooperation agreements." "I know. Are you going to take one?" Deacon looks at his sister through the glass, at the fear and exhaustion in her face, at the weight she's carrying because of choices he made. "I don't know," he says honestly. The visit ends. Deacon is led back to his cell, lies back down on the bunk, stares at the ceiling again. Somewhere out there, Poet is probably getting ready for bed, brushing her teeth, putting on pajamas, maybe looking at the ceiling in her bedroom and wondering if there are cameras there. 2. Somewhere out there, Brennan is building a prosecution that will bury 17 men under decades of evidence. Somewhere out there, the clubhouse sits empty and dark, its secrets extracted and digitized and prepared for presentation to a jury. And Deacon is here, in a cell, at a crossroads. trying to decide if loyalty to men who might not deserve it is worth more than freedom he might never see again. His lawyer arrives the next morning, public defender named Marcus Webb, mid-30s. Tired eyes but sharp mind. He's carrying a file that's already thick with discovery materials. "They've offered you a deal," Webb says without preamble. "Cooperation agreement, full disclosure about interstate operations, testimony if needed. In exchange, they'll recommend 15 years instead of 20. With good behavior, you could be out in 12. 12 years. Poet will be 21, an adult, someone he won't recognize. What if I don't take it? Then you go to trial, face the full evidence, and likely get convicted on every count because they have you on video planning federal crimes. 20 years mandatory minimum, likely closer to 25 with enhancements. What are the others doing? Can't tell you specifics. Attorney-client privilege extends to them too. But I can tell you that several have accepted similar deals. The prosecution has options. They don't need everyone to talk, just enough people to fill in the blanks. Deacon processes this. The walls are closing in, the options narrowing, the future shrinking to a pinpoint. How long do I have to decide? 72 hours. After that, the offer expires. Webb leaves. Deacon is alone again. 72 hours to decide the rest of his life. 72 hours to choose between loyalty and survival. 72 hours to become someone Poet can be proud of, or someone she'll visit through glass for the next decade. The clock on the wall outside his cell reads 10:43 in the morning. In 72 hours, it will read 10:43 on Saturday morning, and Deacon's choice will have been made, one way or another. He closes his eyes, tries to sleep, can't. Because every time he closes his eyes, he sees Poet pointing at the ceiling, asking a simple question, telling a simple truth, and he wonders if he has the courage to do the same. If this story made you think about the cost of truth, about the weight of choices made under pressure, about how innocence can sometimes see more clearly than experience, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe. These are the stories that stay with you, the ones that ask hard questions about loyalty and survival, and what we owe to the people who depend on us. More stories ahead that explore the spaces between right and wrong, where real people make impossible choices. Deacon makes his decision on the second night, not because he found clarity, but because the silence in his cell became unbearable. At 2:17 in the morning, staring at a ceiling. That offers no answers. He realizes that loyalty to men who would probably sell him out to save themselves is not the same as loyalty to the people who actually need him. Poet needs an uncle who comes home eventually. Sloan needs a brother who can help carry the weight, and he needs to live with himself when this is all over. He tells Webb the next morning, takes the deal, agrees to full cooperation. The words taste like betrayal, but they sound like survival. Within hours, the dominoes start falling faster. Deacon's cooperation unlocks information about operations in 3 other states. Names, dates, bank accounts, the kind of specific details that transform a strong case into an overwhelming one. By the end of the week, 4 more members take deals, then 6 more, then all but 3. Reaper holds out, so does Flint, and an enforcer named Cutter, who has nothing to lose because he's already serving state time on an unrelated charge. The 3 of them sit in separate cells, watching. Their brotherhood dissolve into a collection of individuals trying to save themselves. 2 months pass. The initial media frenzy fades. The news cycle moves on to other stories, other crises. But the legal machinery grinds forward with mechanical precision. Discovery, depositions, plea negotiations. The prosecution builds its case brick by brick, using the cooperation agreements to fill in every blank, answer every question, close every loophole. Poet goes back to being a regular 9-year-old, school, friends, coloring books. But something has changed in her. She notices things differently now, sees cameras everywhere, security systems, surveillance equipment that used to be invisible. The world revealed itself as a place where privacy is mostly illusion, where someone is always watching, where the eyes in the corners never really close. Sloan keeps working double shifts, keeps the apartment, keeps Poet's life as normal as possible. But she visits Deacon every 2 weeks, brings Poets. Sometimes, sits on the other side of glass and pretends that everything will be okay, even when both of them know it won't be okay for a very long time. During one visit in late November, Poet asks a question through the phone. Uncle Deacon, did I get you in trouble? He looks at her through the glass, this small person who changed everything without meaning to, this innocent observer who saw truth and spoke it without calculation. No, baby, you didn't get me in trouble. I got myself in trouble. You just noticed something that needed noticing. But the men are mad at you now because you talked to the police. Deacon glances at Sloane. She shrugs apologetically. Kids hear things. Kids understand more than adults want them to. Some of them are, he admits. But that's not your fault. That's mine. I made choices, bad choices, for a long time. You just asked a question about a light. That's all. Are you going to be okay? The question breaks something in Deacon's chest. Because how do you tell a 9-year-old that okay is relative? That 12 years is better than 25. That survival is the best version of okay he can hope for. Yeah, Poet. I'm going to be okay. It's going to take a while. But I'll be okay. She nods slowly, goes back to the coloring book she brought. She's working on another sky. Always the sky. Blue crayon moving in careful strokes. But this time, she's added something new. Small dots scattered across the blue. Stars or cameras or just marks. Deacon can't tell which. The trial for the 3 holdouts begins in February. Federal courthouse downtown. Standing room only in the gallery. Journalists. Curious citizens. Law students studying RICO prosecution. The attention is intense but brief. Most trials are boring. Hours of testimony about chain of custody and authentication of evidence. Technical details that matter legally but don't make good television. Brennan takes the stand, walks the jury through the investigation, explains how the cameras were installed during routine maintenance by a contractor working for the government, describes the 7 months of surveillance, the 847 hours of footage, the meticulous documentation of federal crimes committed by men who thought they were safe. When the defense attorney asks how the surveillance was discovered, Brennan pauses, looks at the jury. A child noticed one of the cameras during a routine visit to the clubhouse. She pointed it out to her uncle. That observation accelerated our timeline and led to the arrests you're seeing prosecuted here today. The defense tries to make something of it, suggests entrapment, questions the ethics of using a child's observation, but the judge shuts it down. The girl wasn't working for the government. She wasn't a confidential informant. She was just a kid who saw a blinking light and asked why. The jury deliberates for 6 hours, comes back with guilty verdicts on all counts for all 3 defendants. Reaper gets 25 years, Flint gets 23, Cutter gets 20, and will serve it consecutive to his state sentence, meaning he'll likely die in prison. The cooperating witnesses, including Deacon, received their reduced sentences in separate hearings, 12 years, 10 years, 15 years. The math varies based on what they offered and how useful it proved. But all of them will serve significant time. All of them will lose years they can never recover. Deacon's sentencing hearing is on a Thursday in March. The courtroom is nearly empty. Just a few reporters, Sloane in the gallery. No Poet because Sloane decided she didn't need to see her uncle in chains. The judge is thorough, reviews Deacon's cooperation, acknowledges that his information was valuable, notes that he showed genuine remorse, then delivers the sentence. 12 years in federal prison. Credit for time served. Eligible for release in 10 with good behavior. 10 years. Poet will be 19. In college, maybe. Living a life Deacon won't be part of, except through letters and occasional visits and phone calls that cost too much. As they lead him out, he sees Sloane crying quietly in the gallery. He mouths the words, "I'm sorry." She nods, wipes her eyes, mouths back, "I know." The weeks blur together after that. Transfer to a federal correctional institution in Pennsylvania. Processing. Assignment to a cell block. Learning the rhythm of institutional life. The sameness of days. The slow erosion of hope that happens when you're counting time in years instead of hours. Deacon writes letters. To Sloane. To Poet. Long letters about nothing important because nothing important happens in prison. Just time passing. Just existence measured in meals and counts and commissary days. Poet writes back. Her handwriting gets better as months pass. Her spelling improves. Her thoughts get more complex. She tells him about school, about friends, about a science project on astronomy where she learned the light from stars. Takes years to reach Earth, So when you look at the sky, you're seeing the past, not the present. Deacon reads that letter 3 times, thinks about surveillance cameras and blinking lights and how observation changes everything. Thinks about how Poet is learning to see the world in ways that will serve her better than they served him. A year passes, then 2. The news cycle has long since moved on. The federal case against the Iron Hollow Motorcycle Club is just another archived prosecution, another set of mugshots in a database, another example used in law school classes about effective RICO strategy. But, for Poet, it's the event that defined her childhood. The moment when her innocent question dismantled a world. She doesn't talk about it much, doesn't bring it up with friends, but it's always there. This knowledge that truth has consequences, that seeing clearly can be dangerous, that sometimes the right thing and the safe thing are not the same. She's 11 now, 6th grade, still drawing, still noticing things, but she's more careful about what she says, more aware of how words land, more conscious of the weight that observation carries. On a Saturday afternoon in April, Sloane takes her to visit Deacon. They've done this dozens of times now. The routine is familiar, the drive, the security checkpoint, the waiting room, the glass partition, the phones that never quite work right. Deacon looks older, grayer, the prison years showing in lines around his eyes, and a stiffness in how he moves. But he smiles when he sees them, always smiles even when Sloane knows he's struggling. "How's school?" he asks Poet. "Good. We're reading a book about a girl who solves mysteries." "You like it?" "Yeah." She notices things other people miss, like footprints. "And who's lying?" Deacon glances at Sloane, back to Poet. "Sounds familiar." Poet nods. "The teacher said I'd probably like it because I'm observant." That's the word she used, observant. It's a good word, good, skill to have. But sometimes I wish I didn't notice things. It would be easier. The honesty in her voice cuts through the glass. Deacon leans forward slightly. "Easier isn't always better, Poet. You saw something that needed seeing. You told the truth when it mattered. That takes courage most adults don't have. But you got in trouble. I was already in trouble. I'd been in trouble for 15 years. You just helped bring it to light. There's a difference." Poet considers this, traces a pattern on the counter in front of her. "Do you wish I hadn't said anything?" Deacon takes a breath. This is the question he knew would come eventually. The question he's been preparing for since the night she pointed at that ceiling. "No, I don't wish that. Because if you hadn't said anything, I'd still be breaking the law. Still be lying to myself about what I was doing. Still be headed for something worse. You asking that question gave me a chance to make better choices. Even if those choices are hard. Even if I'm sitting here because of them. You're not mad at me? Never, not for 1 second. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. You saw something wrong and you asked about it. That's all any of us can do. See clearly and speak honestly." Poet nods slowly. Some tension releases from her small shoulders. This burden she's been carrying for 2.5 years, this guilt about destroying her uncle's life, finally acknowledged and addressed. The visit ends. Deacon watches them leave, watches Poet's ponytail swinging as she walks away, watches Sloane's hand on her daughter's shoulder, watches his family disappear through doors he can't follow them through. Back in his cell that night, he thinks about accountability, about how he spent 15 years blaming circumstances and choices and the system for where he ended up. But really, he ended up here because he made decisions, joined a club, participated in crimes, convinced himself that loyalty to brotherhood mattered more than following the law. Poet showed him something he didn't want to see, that his sanctuary was compromised, that his safety was illusion, that the life he'd built was constructed on sand. But she also showed him something more important. That truth, even uncomfortable truth, is worth speaking. That innocence can see what experience blinds you to. That sometimes the smallest voice in the room carries the most clarity. 5 years pass. Poet is 14, high school freshman, still drawing, but now she's interested in engineering, wants to design things, build things, create structures that serve purposes and solve problems. She visits Deacon less frequently now. Teenage life gets busy, friends and school and activities. Sloane brings her when she can. Deacon understands, doesn't take it personally. Prison changes how relationships work. Distance and time and glass barriers erode even the strongest connections. But when Poet does visit, the conversations are different now. Deeper. She asks questions about his life before, about choices he made, about what he'd do differently if he could go back. I'd have left the club, he tells her during one visit, after my first arrest. Should have seen it as a warning. Should have chosen different friends, different path. Why didn't you? Because leaving felt like betrayal, like admitting I was wrong. Easier to stay and convince myself I was right. Poet processes this. She's old enough now to understand complexity, to see that people aren't just good or bad, but collections of choices that add up over time. Do you think the surveillance was right? She asks. Like, legally they were allowed, but was it right? Deacon considers the question. Legally, yes. They had warrants, probable cause. Did everything by the book. Morally? I don't know. We were breaking the law, hurting people through what we did. So maybe we deserve to be watched. Maybe that's the price you pay when you operate outside society's rules. But what about privacy? Don't people have a right to that? People who aren't committing federal crimes, yeah. We gave up that right when we chose to do what we did. Poet nods, thinks. I still see cameras everywhere. Like, I can't stop noticing them now. Store, school, street corners, they're always there. Does it bother you? Sometimes. Makes me feel like nothing is private anymore. Like someone is always watching. Someone probably is, Deacon says. That's the world now. Surveillance is everywhere. Question is whether you're doing things you need to hide. I'm not? Then the cameras don't matter. Let them watch. You've got nothing to fear from people seeing who you really are. The wisdom surprises Poet. Her uncle, who spent 15 years hiding, now telling her that transparency is freedom, that living honestly means the cameras lose their power. 8 years pass. Poet is 19, college sophomore studying civil engineering. She's designing her first real project for a class, a community center with spaces for gathering and learning and growth. Her professor praises her attention to detail, her ability to see potential problems before they become actual problems. She visits Deacon on his birthday. He's 49 now, 8 years into his sentence, 2 years from release if he maintains good behavior. I got accepted into an internship, she tells him through the phone. Structural engineering firm in Philadelphia, starts next summer. Pride lights up Deacon's face. That's incredible, Poet. You've worked so hard. I wanted to tell you first, before I told Mom. Why? Because you're the reason I'm good at this, at seeing things, at noticing what others miss. That skill you said was valuable. It's true. It's made me better at what I do. Deacon feels emotion tightening his throat. You were always good at that. I just noticed it first. You also taught me about consequences, about how choices add up, about being honest even when it's hard. Poet, I'm in prison, not sure I'm the best teacher on making good choices. You taught me what happens when you don't. That's just as important. They sit in silence for a moment, the phones pressed to their ears, the glass between them, the years of visits compressed into this one moment of understanding. I'm proud of you, Deacon says, more than you know. I'm proud of you too, for cooperating, for telling the truth when it cost you, for being honest with me about everything. I didn't have much choice. You did. Other men didn't take the deal. You did. That took courage. Deacon has never thought of his decision that way. Always saw it as weakness, as breaking, as betrayal of the code he lived by for 15 years. But hearing Poet frame it as courage, as choosing truth over loyalty to people who didn't deserve it, changes something in how he carries the weight. 10 years pass. Deacon is released on a Tuesday morning in October. He's 51 years old, 10 years older than when he entered. A decade of his life spent in a cell, a decade of missed moments and lost time. Sloan picks him up. Poet is there too. She's 21 now, graduated college, working at an engineering firm in Pittsburgh. She took the day off to be here for this. Deacon walks through the prison gates carrying a small bag with his possessions. The world outside looks different, brighter, louder, more overwhelming than he remembered. 10 years changes everything. Technology, fashion, language. He feels like a time traveler stepping into a future that moved on without him. Poet hugs him, really hugs him, not through glass, not limited by phones and barriers, just a real hug. She's taller than he remembered, stronger, more confident. The girl who pointed at a ceiling is gone. The woman who stands here now is someone he's still getting to know. Welcome back, she says. They drive to Sloan's apartment. It's the same building, but a different unit. 2 bedrooms now. She's doing better. Financially, still working hard, but not quite as desperately. The years have been kinder to her than to Deacon. The apartment has a couch, a television, normal furniture for a normal life. Deacon sits and just absorbs the normalcy of it, the freedom to sit where he wants, to stand when he wants, to walk to a window and look outside without permission. Poet sits next to him. "I made you something." She hands him a rolled piece of paper. He unrolls it carefully. It's a drawing, detailed and technical, but also artistic. A building, community center, the design she did in college. But in the corner, small and careful, she's drawn a night sky, blue with small dots, stars scattered across it. "It's my first real project," she explains. "They're building it, should be finished next year. I wanted you to have the original design." Deacon studies the drawing, sees her growth, her talent, her ability to create spaces where people can gather and grow and be better than they were. "It's beautiful, Poet. There's something else." She points to a detail in the corner, a small security camera drawn into the design. "I put cameras in the design, for safety. But I made sure everyone knows they're there. No hidden surveillance. Just visible security that people can see and understand." Deacon looks at her, sees the full circle. The girl who spotted a hidden camera now designs buildings with visible ones, taking the lesson she learned and turning it into something better, something transparent. "That's perfect," he says. They spend the evening talking, catching up on 10 years compressed into hours, stories and updates and the small details that make up lives. Sloane makes dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, but it tastes better than anything Deacon has eaten in a decade. As night falls, Poet stands by the window, looks out at the city lights, the cameras on street corners, the surveillance infrastructure that's become part of the landscape. "Do you ever regret it?" she asks. Asking that question, Deacon joins her at the window, looks out at the same view. Every day for the first year, then less as time went on. Now, no, I don't regret it, because it led here. To you becoming who you are, to me being free instead of serving another 15 years, to truth instead of lies. The men who didn't cooperate, they're still in prison. Yeah, Reaper died last year, heart attack. Flint has 8 more years. Cutter will never get out. Do you feel guilty about that? Sometimes. But then I remember that I didn't put them in prison. They put themselves there. I just told the truth about what we did. They chose to keep lying. Poet nods, looks at her reflection in the window glass. "I see cameras everywhere now. Can't stop. It's like once you notice, you can't unnotice. That's not a bad thing. Means you're aware. Means you see the world as it really is, not how you wish it was." "Is that better?" "Yeah, I think it is, because you can't fix problems you don't see. Can't change systems you don't understand. You seeing clearly, even when it's uncomfortable, that's a gift." They stand together in silence, uncle and niece, connected by a moment 10 years ago when a 9-year-old pointed at a ceiling and asked a simple question. Connected by the consequences that cascaded from that question. Connected by the understanding that truth, however painful, is better than comfortable lies. Outside, the city continues its endless motion. Cameras watch intersections. Security systems monitor buildings. Surveillance infrastructure records the endless flow of human activity. The world has changed. Privacy is mostly memory. Observation is constant. But Poet has learned to live in that world, has learned that being watched only matters if you're hiding, that transparency and honesty are shields against the cameras instead of vulnerabilities. And Deacon has learned that sometimes the smallest voice carries the deepest truth. That innocence sees what experience blinds you to. That a child asking why can unravel worlds built on secrets. The blue sky Poet colored 10 years ago hangs on Sloane's refrigerator. Faded now, edges worn, but still there, still visible. A reminder of the night everything changed. In the corner of that colored sky, almost invisible unless you're looking for it, Poet drew a small red dot. Just a mark, just a detail. But to those who know the story, it represents everything. The blinking light that ended a brotherhood. The observation that freed her uncle from a life of lies. The question that proved truth is stronger than any secret. Deacon looks at that drawing as they eat leftover pasta for a midnight snack, sees that red dot, smiles slightly. You knew even then, he says. Knew what? That seeing matters, that noticing is important, that small details change everything. Poet follows his gaze to the drawing, shrugs. I just liked coloring skies, the red dot made it more interesting. But they both know it's more than that some part of her understood, even at 9, that observation is power, that awareness is responsibility, that once you see truth, you can't pretend you don't. The night settles. Deacon sleeps on Sloane's couch, first real sleep in 10 years, without bars and counts and institutional noise. He dreams of open roads and clear skies and futures unwritten. In the morning, Poet leaves for Pittsburgh, hugs him goodbye, promises to visit soon, drives away in a car she bought with her own money from a job she earned through her own skill. Deacon watches her go. This person who saved him by accident, this observer who changed his life by asking a question, this engineer who builds transparent spaces where truth lives in the open. And he thinks about cameras, about the ones in the clubhouse that watched him commit crimes, about the ones on street corners that keep cities safer, about the ones Poet includes in her designs, visible and acknowledged. He thinks about how surveillance is only threatening when you're living dishonestly, how cameras lose their power when you're transparent, how the best defense against observation is simply living in a way that can withstand scrutiny. A 9-year-old taught him that, taught 20 hardened criminals that, taught a federal prosecutor that innocence sometimes sees more clearly than expertise, taught the world that the smallest observation can carry the heaviest truth. The clubhouse is gone now, sold, demolished, replaced by a storage facility that holds people's excess belongings. The cameras that watched for 7 months are evidence in boxes. The brotherhood that thought itself untouchable is scattered across federal prisons. But Poet remains, drawing, designing, building, creating spaces where people can gather in the light instead of hiding in shadows. And Deacon remains, free, rebuilding, learning to live honestly in a world that watches everything, the blinking red light that changed both. Their lives is long gone, but its lesson remains. Truth survives surveillance. Honesty defeats cameras. And sometimes the most profound wisdom comes from the most innocent questions. If you've ever noticed something small that revealed something enormous, if you've ever asked a simple question that unraveled complex lies, if you've ever wondered whether seeing clearly is worth the cost of what you might discover, then you understand this story. These moments when innocence cuts through deception, when observation defeats secrecy, when a child's honesty accomplishes what law enforcement cannot. These are the stories that remind us why truth matters. Subscribe if you believe that seeing clearly, speaking honestly, and living transparently are worth the courage they require, because sometimes the smallest light in the darkest corner illuminates everything.